on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, we review the week, some of the issues we're going to be looking at in depth. The violence and outcome of two by-elections. The 19-year-old lady, Mushabe-Munungu, gets elected to parliament. If she reigns in parliament for 50 years, she'll be almost as old as President Museveni when she retires. She's only 19, the youngest member of parliament to be elected to the house. We'll talk about that. The KCCA breaks down a building built in a road reserve with powerful connections. We'll talk about that. The vice president at one time tried to defend that action. Well, it came down yesterday very early in the morning. We'll talk about the Karuma Dam tender crisis. Power shedding, load shedding could continue a little bit longer because the dam can't be built yet because of the problem with the tendering, corruption in high places. We'll discuss that and other issues. Our guests tonight, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, former Ugandan representative of the East African Legislative Assembly, coming from the NRM party. You're most welcome, Honorable Wanyoto.
Good evening, listeners.
Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL, also a commentator on social and political affairs. You're welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Edmond, and good evening to to my fellow panelists and to all the listeners. I must mention that I got a very beautiful yellow T-shirt, but with a very anti-yellow message this week. I've been wearing it, and thanks to Barbara Limadi, I have the People Power T-shirt.
People Power T-shirt.
Yes.
And people don't know what to do with it, whether to destroy the message or destroy the color.
Well, I'm wearing it.
Sunflower color. Well, we'll talk about some of those ramifications. Dr. David Mushabe from the Mushabe-Munungu Company Advocates. That's our third case. You're most welcome, Dr. Mushabe.
Thank you, Edmond. Good evening, listeners and viewers, and welcome to my fellow panelists.
Well, we had some violence in the last election. Honorable Wanyoto, I know you're not the spokesperson of the NRM, but you can talk to us about that. I mean, there was a little bit of cooperation between by the police and the Electoral Commission that appeared to be more friendly to the voters. There was no wild allegations of rigging by the opposition. What do you think has happened with the police and the Electoral Commission? Some people have said they've become opposition. Talk to us.
First of all, the Electoral Commission declared Mwanga Chivumbi for Butambala and Mushabe-Munungu Almighty for Usu County as members of Parliament elect. So that's concluded our by-elections that took place on Wednesday 12th. Having said that, I don't know why people are calling police opposition. Police, to be fair, operates under very difficult circumstances. We demand so much from them, including favors, depending on which side you are on. And many times they are overstretched because, as you know very well, that they are sometimes, like for us who are in practicing politics, the emotions and the stakes are normally very high, and the site to want to actually incite violence or to create crime is very high. So we put them on the alert, and we cause a lot of commissions on their side. So for me, I don't want to sit here and say police is opposition. I think
in cases where the opposition
environment under which they operate, for me, I appreciate that we put them under, we overstretch them, and it is politically driven because of the stakes and the highly charged environment under which we run our by-elections or elections for that matter.
Do you think this is the end of allegations of rigging?
Rigging, what do you mean?
Well, the past people have said the elections have been rigged right after the presidential election. Some people have said it was rigged.
Well, that's why the framers of our constitution and also the electoral laws, whether presidential, parliamentary or otherwise, I think they're able to look at that inside. That's the Electoral Commission will announce a winner, but that the other parties have space if they agree to make an appeal. To me, that's important because many times, many elections are very tight. Everybody thinks they are going to win. But until the results have been opened in the ballot boxes and read out, you never know. So you're not satisfied until... And they've been proven right, because when they go to court, actually, there is proof either way that either you actually lost an election or you won. So for me, I think we should be open and allow people either to concede defeat, or if they are not concede defeat, to seek legal redress, which I think is very important, and that we've provided for it in our legal regime. Why am I saying this? Is because if you don't provide for an alternative
dispute resolution,
then people will find their own. They'll either go do violence, or do what President Museveni and his colleagues did in 1981. In 1980, although there was a legal regime then, they did not trust the judiciary or the legal system. So we want to avoid people finding alternatives that are not actually friendly to the security and the safety and stability of the country. So that, please, if you are grieved about the results, there is an opportunity for you to seek redress, and I think that should work for all of us.
Nicholas, what's your own reading of this election?
Well, for me,
some civilian men, maybe you've not heard about this, arrested some Chiboko squad vehicle. Talk to us.
Well, that's surprising for me, because you see, if you begin to observe electoral trends in the last two elections have become a matter of do or die. There seems to be some desperation to win it at all costs.
At any cost.
At any cost. So the question is why? How did we in the very first place get to this level where elections are about life and death? That for me puzzles me. And I think that for the cases of the two by-elections, I really read three things as to why. First of all, just to be good-mannered, to congratulate the winners and pray that the losers accept defeat, and then the country moves on and not embroiled in another round of electoral petition, court cases. Can the MPs just get to work and deliver for their people, no matter what their abilities are, really? So that's a given. Secondly, I think that if you look at what happened in Kasese, you look at what then happened in Masaka, you look at what happened in Osuk, you begin to see an attempt by the movement party to arrest this wave of losing by-elections. And therefore there was so much investment in time and energy in trying to win back these constituencies. In Kasese, you had a whole defense minister prowling the entire district in search for votes for their candidate.
Prowling?
Yeah,
which
is a good thing. I mean, he has got to go and campaign for his candidate. Then you have the whole saga of Osuk, where you have a whole Minister of Education who, in spite of the biting problem in the education ministry, found the time to go and campaign for this little girl. Okay, this young lady, maybe just because of respect, this young lady.
The honorable teenager.
So we see an attempt by the NRM to arrest that trend, and therefore an investment of energy and resources to try and win it back. I mean, the whole honorable Lydia, I think, spent her time in Mutambala searching for votes. So I think that is perhaps part of the reason, and you could see the amount of deployment. In Kasese it was massive. In Masaka, on the two occasions, it was massive. So that for me is the worrying trend.
Well, but that's politics. That's what you expect. You spoke about the Minister for Defense in Kasese. That's where it comes from. The Education Minister. That's where it comes from in the East. That's what you would expect.
Perfectly okay. But you have, everyone has a right to go back and campaign for their candidates. But the amount of energy that you invest in the elections speak of your interest in that election. And I'm just saying that it did speak of the interest of the Shonga group, but also of the interest of the Alupa group. But
how about a 19-year-old in Parliament? The first time this is happening, apparently.
In all honesty, I do pity her. I think that the little girl doesn't know what she's doing. I do think that she's just being a pawn in this chess game of politics, because for the first time there was a primary for a re-election where there was an official candidate. There was all this power struggle. And again, going back to the first point I made, what you see is an attempt by powerful people in these districts to then show that they're working hard to entrench the movement, and then you have all of these power struggles between MPs and even ministers from these areas. And then therefore what you then do is this 19-year-old senior citizen.
We're not even sure if she's registered as a voter. The last time we had an election, we're not sure if she was registered.
That's a question for interrogation in court if somebody contests a high election. But the point then is, I think that she doesn't know what she's doing. I think you will be surprised. And believe me, watch this little girl carefully. After 10 years, she's going to fall from high up there because she hasn't earned the right to go there. She's been catapulted. My view is this girl is just going to fall, bam, and that's the end of her.
You don't think she'll run the ropes?
Believe me, she will not. Believe me, she will not.
I look at the fact, if she stayed in parliament 50 years, Daniel Arap Moi was in parliament 48 years in Kenya. If she stayed in parliament 50 years, by the time she retires, she'll be almost as old as President Museveni is now.
Well, that's hypothetical, and I don't want to tie this to President Museveni. Really, in all fairness, we're trying to
there are 7-year-olds in parliament. Somebody has said grandfathers of this girl are in parliament, and what does that mean? What does it say about our elective politics? A 19-year-old coming to the house, and what do you think it will have any ramifications for age? The age makes in that parliament.
Well, Edmond, there are probably two probable interpretations of that situation. One is that it might suggest that the masses are so desperate and they are tired of the old guards. Now they want some new blood. But also, I have observed that when a member of parliament dies, the masses, I think, I don't know whether it is embedded within the African culture or DNA, the sympathy goes to the one who is a member of the family. We saw it here in Entebbe. Then also when Honorable Wanyoto died.
In Karamoja, the Minister for Ethics and Integrity is a cousin to the late El Ludu.
Yes.
He will speak from the funeral to go and contest.
Exactly. There's that sympathy. So I don't know which is which, whether the masses are so desperate and they are saying, look, we are tired of the old guards, we have seen what we have seen, now we want change. Or whether we don't want to hurt you twice. You have lost your loved one, so we don't want now to deny you.
It's a reward for the loss.
So it is there. It might be a reward for the loss. However, Edmond, I would want to comment on this issue. In about 2001, after the elections of 2001, the NRM strategists sat down. They realized that there was a higher voter turn-up for the president, and whenever it came to the parliamentary elections, there was a lower turnout. So what they did, they said, let us combine the two, presidential and parliamentary.
Yes.
The rationale was, it is cost-effective, we don't spend twice, why don't we do it all at once? So even the members of opposition who were in parliament at that time, they could not smell the trap.
What trap was there?
The trap was that right now, when you combine the two and you try to guard the elections so strictly, they say, oh, you are messing up with the president's elections. That's what they're saying. That's what the peasants say. President. Now, when they are all wholeheartedly guarding the president's vote, the MPs also slide in theirs and they rig.
Oh. You think the election is rigged?
No, what I'm saying, for the MPs,
you think
what I have observed,
because of the loss of the by-elections?
They rigged.
You think so?
No, it is not because of the loss of the elections. It is because of what I have observed, because I've been a participant. They say, tuteganya Karuruka president, Karuruka president. So you are trying to interfere with the president's vote. Because the masses apparently seem to still be in love with the president. But they seem to care no less. They seem not to care about the MPs.
All right.
So that is why when they are left naked during the by-elections, they don't have a president to tag on. They lose.
All right. Okay.
Now I'm worried, and I think that if they happened to reverse this law and separate,
there would be a watershed.
There would probably the parliament would be 2/3 opposition with the president.
We'll talk about something. We'll talk about something else right now.
But quickly, my sister here talked about legal redress when you are rigged and all that. There is a difference between theory and practice. By and large, I think world over, justice is still for the rich. If you don't have money, you can't access the courts. Because if you go there and you don't have money to pay for your legal costs and whatever, you might be in deeper trouble. So it is good that on our books we say if you are aggrieved during elections, go and sue. But many choose not to go because of that financial element.
Listen, this is Spectrum. We are doing the week of guests, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, Nicholas Opiyo, and David Mushabe, Dr. David Mushabe. You might not be able to call in, but you can send a text message to 7197. That is Spectrum. Message, question, or comment. Send it to 7197. Nicholas, KCC demolishes a building owned by a man named after a motor vehicle. Is this the end of impunity? The man Toyota is connected highly. Is this the end of impunity?
Well, the point that I think needs to be made is this, that there seems to be an apparent commitment on the part of KCCA to implement the law regardless. And what better way to demonstrate that than to go after a company linked to the president's family, or a member of that family? Or what better way to do it than to defy the orders of a whole vice president? Because I'm aware, I've been privy to the fact that the vice president tried to twist KCCA to grant a 1.5-year lease to this company to maintain their building on a road reserve, on the pretext that it will spoil investor confidence. So in his capacity as the chairman of the Uganda-China relations, he attempted to twist. So I think that the fact that KCC had the audacity to say no, in fact they did tell it to him and said, look, if a Ugandan investor goes to China and puts up a kiosk
on the pavement,
you'll be hanged. So I think that is kudos to KCCA, and we've got to applaud them for that. Now, that courage does come with a lot of costs. There's PR costs, there's all this cost about sweats of, quite honestly, a very brutal and lethal group of businessmen and businesswomen in this town whose interest is to grab public property.
Yes.
I can tell you this, that people at KCCA, many of whom who have been involved in this decision, live in constant fear of their lives. There have been threats to their lives. There have been the PRO who was at the scene.
They tore his shirt.
He was nearly beaten. So I mean, we've got to give KCCA a chance, and how I wish they would overcome their differences with the Lord Mayor and get down to work. The test of it, though, would be not by demolishing this one structure, but how they will move ahead and clear other illegal structures that we know in this town are sitting on road reserves and in wetlands. If they did not do that, for me, then that will only be an indictment on their part. Can they carry it forward? The jury is out there on them.
However, Wanyoto, do you think they'll carry out their threats? What hotels like Imperial and other big hotels, and is it prudent, is it wise to do that, or should there be an amnesty?
No, I think we should give KCC a space and support to do their work, because their work is cut out. It is tough. It touches very many nerves, but you cannot have your cake and don't at the same time keep it. So I think we should allow them to do their work, and if they are threatened, they are a creature of our government and our laws, that they should be protected. So I don't think that there's anybody larger than the law of Uganda. Although my neighbor here thinks that the laws are theory, but I don't think we have any option other than to refer to them, because then where do we draw our strength from, and where do we draw our whatever inspiration from? I mean, you must have something that you rely on, whether or not it works for you or not. It's a different matter. So I think that they should make their appeals, and I think they're doing well. It's tough. I don't think many of us would admire what the KCC executive director is going through in terms of delivering on her brief, but she needs the support of everybody with her team, and sometimes we are very unkind to their work, but it's also a wake-up call. We've grown up as a people that have laws but don't want to respect them, and that have rules and regulations that we don't want to respect, and they are in our interest.
Yes.
So somebody else has to come and check us to ensure that these things are implemented and enforced. Because we have good policies, we have good laws, but nobody enforces them. So I think this is a chance for us to pick from what KCCA is doing. Whether or not they will be selective, Time will tell.
Okay.
Honorable, if I can just read.
I noticed that, the vice president called a meeting into his office, called some KCA officials, junior officials, and then he sent a record of minutes, which the KCCA director, executive director, said those minutes were false. That was a bold statement. He told the vice president, you misrecorded, you misrepresented that meeting, and we're going ahead anyway. David Mushabe,
if I can just quickly read for you a letter dated 10th September to the vice president. On page 1, they said, we respectfully like to correct the impression contained in your letter and record of the meeting sent to us. And they're going to say, our view is that investors, whether local or actually from outside the country, should comply with existing Ugandan municipal laws while executing their business interests. To shield the foreign investors from penalties of their breaches would amount to toleration of illegalities.
David Mushabe.
Now, for me, my take is this. This is some sort of a sign to commitment to corruption and impunity. Now, for so many years, we have had these are orders from above.
Yes.
This is something you hear and you don't know who is.
And you begin to shake.
And you begin to shake. And some big person will come and say, do you know who I am? I observed, I witnessed one.
Some of them have pot bellies, some of them don't.
I witnessed one gentleman going to a wedding where some dignitaries were expected to attend, and he was told to go through the security machine and say, do you know who I am? Now, here, the executive director.
It will be like saying, I'm a man in your own home.
Exactly.
It casts a shadow on you, whoever is speaking.
For me, this is a sign that probably NRM is reinventing itself. Because the powers that appointed Musisi up above there, so Musisi is not acting out of vacuum. He must have confidence. Yes, there is the law, but he must have some confidence to give her the kind of boldness even to go after these kind of structures. So I think the fight against, I think this is a kudos, probably. This is kudos to the government.
Clean governance.
Saying, we'll give you what you are supposed
on
to
1st of October.
Yes, I think NRM is re-engineering itself to the good direction.
First is the Electoral Commission, then is the police, now is the KCC.
Yes.
Cleaning things.
Yes, I think the Electoral Commission, on the other hand, their hands are tied. Where the president is not pictured here,
I think
he's
it's
not
also
in the picture.
Dr. Alan Council.
May I first finish?
Please go ahead.
Where the president's votes are not here in question, and it is now the individual citizens.
I think it's too generous. I mean,
the citizens are more vigilant. They are more vigilant. They say, look, we voted, our president is already there. Now, leave us to control this one. So the Electoral Commission's hands are tied. Yes, of course, you have to give them.
The point I want to make is that to stretch this to say the NRM is reinventing itself is rather too stretched, because one, we've seen what happens in other government institutions, but also secondly, to say that is to admit that the NRM has had something really, really, really wrong, which I doubt Honorable Lydia would admit to. I don't think there hasn't been that kind of rot to begin to think that the NRM is shedding off that skin, then morphing into something else, and then you point to cases here.
Everybody talking like this in the car, this in the bar. Doesn't even matter wherever you are. With overload, what you really don't know is Mutende. You get a little bit more.
A little longer. Send text to all your loved ones and laugh a little longer.
Get 15% extra airtime guaranteed every time you load with MTN. Simply dial *145#. Get talking all day up to midnight with MTN Overload.
MTN. Everywhere you go. Bank of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics are conducting a survey on the real estate sector to collect data on price of land and property. The data collected will help policymakers better understand the economy and business people to plan for their investments. The monthly survey, which will be conducted in Kampala, Mukono, Wakiso, and Entebbe, will collect information on purchase and sale of land, residential houses, and rent of commercial premises for business and industrial purposes. The survey data will be published by Bank of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics on a quarterly basis and will be available to the public at no cost. Interviewers with clear identification will visit real estate agents, property owners, and mortgage lenders to complete survey forms. Bank of Uganda assures the public that the information will be kept confidential, only published in aggregate forms, and will not be used for tax purposes. Bank of Uganda appeals to the public to cooperate fully with the interviewers.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back. This is Spectrum on Radio, and tonight we're reviewing the week. Our guests, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, former Uganda representative in the East African Parliament. She belongs to the NRM party. Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL, also political and social affairs commentator, and Dr. David Mushabe from the Mushabe-Munungu and company advocates. You will be able to send text messages if you'd like to. Send them to 719-712. Type the word Spectrum in your phone browser, leave a space, message, question, or comment, send it to 7197.
Karuna panel of lawyers. Can you imagine the panel of these lawyers? The doctor, learn counsel,
These lawyers are historians, theologians,
other politicians. Alright, David, let's talk about this corruption at the Karuma, at the State House and Earthed It. Is this where the hope lies? State House, we should give them more money to do some of these things.
Well, okay, you raised a couple of issues here.
Is this where the hope lies? State House, is that State?
The Karuma Dam.
Yes. Is that where the hope is? Should State House be doing?
I think so. When I read this, I said, look, this is kudos to State House. If State House can eavesdrop and capture the discussions of wrongdoers and take corrective action, I think this is good. However, I don't know whether it is State House which is the one which should be doing that. But regardless of who did it, if what was done was good, then it is good. So if they found out that the people who evaluated the bid, they were compromised and they took a corrective measure, probably at the stage where Uganda is now, because corruption is from LC1 all the way.
You think it starts from LC1?
Yes.
The man with the stamp?
Exactly.
The most powerful man in Uganda is the LC1. Besides whether you're a citizen, whether you can get a passport, whether you can vote.
even if you hold office illegally.
Exactly. So now, since corruption is so entrenched, and the State House can come up with the system,
binoculars,
then that is okay.
Edmond, this is my problem. I mean, if State House does something good, that's fine. But I don't think it should be it's not the core job of State House to begin to follow up cases of corruption. What happened to institutions? What happened to policies and systems? Once you have that kind of action, it's an endorsement, it's an indictment on the system. It means that the structure, the systems are not working, and therefore you require the highest office in this land to investigate and come up with these kind of measures. My point is, I think that the biggest problem we are having, and you know, corruption is just a manifestation, because see, the biggest corruption scandals break up in procurement processes. You have a procurement regime that has, you know, you have an evaluation committee, this committee at this ministry, at this LC1, all levels have red tape committees that oversee procurement. All of these red tape points are actually points of corruption, are points of extortion. My view is that the entire procurement process needs to be reviewed with a view of having, in my view, a more central, or if you take it lower, it could be at regional levels, or at worst district level, procurement processes. It makes it faster, it makes it cleaner, it makes it easier for those who are watching over these processes to follow it through. If you have committees at ministries, at departments, it becomes difficult to follow all of this. So I think that we've got to begin to look at reviewing our procurement processes.
Well, it's already centralized. You simply
it is not. We have a body that regulates operation but doesn't handle procurement. PPD doesn't
have the brain power to handle centralized and the ability to create a machinery that does central procurement. We've seen a mess in the health sector.
Well, we can do it. I think that's
we've seen a mess in just one sector, health.
Yeah. I mean, it's what we need to do. I mean, because what you do is don't just create that centralized system, but rather have a fully functional central system, or at best take it as low as regional district levels, where you can then have it closely monitored, because you have all of these There are too many cooks in this.
But he's talking about they try to centralize it through the PPDA, which people complain is too bureaucratic.
PPDA is not a procurement body. PPDA actually ensures compliance.
Well, but it's not a procurement body. How much worse would it be?
So
let's say if it would actually do the procurement across the board, that would be a nightmare. Looking at the competencies of people, some of the people.
Not a nightmare. Look at this. UPDF procurement processes. This might be security information.
Helicopters, uniforms gone. Both
UPDF procurement systems don't have all of these other small different branches. And I think the point was captured beautifully by somebody who wrote in the Monitor. I think it was Daniel Kalinachi, who said, look, it's much more easier to procure helicopters and army equipment than it is to procure
aspirin
services for roads, aspirins and hospitals. Systems just don't work.
But Edmond, with due respect to my land friend here's submission, Uganda right now, even if you come up with the system that my brother here is suggesting, the pool from which they are going to choose the people to run the new system is still going to be rotten. So my suggestion is give them something to lose. Now there is a new bill, an amendment bill with on corruption, anti-corruption. Give them something to lose and give them a reason to fear, to engage in those corrupt tendencies.
The cost of doing corruption should be horrendous.
Yeah.
Yes,
it should be found out for us, Honorable.
Otherwise, we are the same pool.
How should it be done?
That's if you are caught indulging in
they
corruption.
talk about your grandmothers.
Yeah, the price you pay is too high.
The house is
the clans.
Yeah. So.
But see, you're going to run into legal problems with that kind of treatment. That because Edmond, God forbid, is suspected of having been involved in corruption, you then confiscate his wife's property, his son's daughter's property.
No, there has to be evidence.
A lot of
proof from you to that other person. It cannot be just presumptuous because we are related and you did something and I'm well off, therefore I must have gotten it from you. Of course, the other legal processes would take over. They have to trace, and so a trail leading to my house. I think the new bill before Parliament is good.
There's no bill actually. There's a proposal.
There's a proposal.
Yeah.
No. There is actually, they've been given leave. I know members of Parliament who have moved an amendment to that bill, that act, so that there is provision for attachment of property.
All right, let's move forward. We pray maybe it will happen. So some large houses are put on the market. The stand up on the proposed budget cuts with the health sector. Honorable Lydia, government has opposed a proposed 30% budget cut across all sectors. It came from Parliament because they want to raise 260 billion shillings for the
they will
health
not
sector.
pull it off because members of Parliament are very firm on. They actually had their own meeting and had a vote, so they have tied government's hands. What now the government has done, they've asked for time until Tuesday afternoon when they'll be able to firmly propose a commitment on that. So I don't think that it's a debate anymore because the members of Parliament have taken a firm stand on the reallocation for the health sector. So and that's not all the money that the health sector had proposed. It's just like half of it, but it is going to it's a beginning of seeing the cries of uplifting the health center and being sensitive really to what we are going through in the health sector.
Let's do some parallels. When teachers wanted a pay rise, MPs went and sat in a hotel for 3 days, locked in there. They couldn't find an answer. This time they found an answer. What are the
It has been a struggle. Actually, I know that there are 3 sectors that are mind-boggling members of Parliament because they are under a lot of pressure from their constituents. One of them is the road infrastructure, especially when it's really bad. If the Karamoja is cut off, sub-region, you can't go to Roro Soroti, it's dead, the highways, the road is dead, and all over. So you find that MPs are literally, because people cannot transport their goods, they can't travel, their kids can't go to school because it's just a lake across the road, the bridges have been washed away. And therefore, if you find them in Parliament and the Ministry of Works, they're literally raging. They want something done on roads. That's one, road infrastructure. The second one is health. I was in Butambala, and there's a sub-county called Gomba. It is based in Gombe sub-county. Gombe sub-county houses Gombe Hospital. We could not look for votes in that.
That
That sub-county we lost. It's just a micro microcosm of what's happening in the rest of the. So we can say, look, we don't have money now as government, the basket is small, but the cries out there are real. And members of parliament have been pushed to the wall, particularly for this budget. So you can talk, and the third one is education. So you can talk about, well, they didn't get money last time, but the pressure is too much. And I think if they can deliver something for the health sector in this financial year, it will be a beginning to do something for the infrastructure next year, and maybe supplementary budget for the education sector. And Honorable Jessica Lupo should be in Parliament.
The Minister for Education.
Yeah, because you're asking me issues on education. She's the full Minister for Education, so she should come and witness people struggling to pull to their side. This is the time. This is the time to pull to your sector. If she's not that campaign, people cannot speak for her.
She was in his in Parliament.
Yeah.
But see, Edmond, the point that I want to make is this: in many, we witnessed this in many European countries, in Greece, in Italy, in Portugal, where the government is exercising austerity measures, basically trying to spend smarter, and people are opposing it. What an irony that here in Uganda, you have a whole head of government in the House opposing these measures. These are, I think, measures that are good for this country. And any sensible person who, I'm not saying they're senseless, but they should take it in good light and say, look, you've identified cuts in things like advertising, in things like printing paper, workshops, travels in country and out country. These are reasonable costs to be cut, and I think that they need to do it because, as the Honorable Lydia said, there are sectors in this country that people are literally just getting by. I've seen pictures of schools studying under buildings that are in dangerous condition. I think
if they're lucky to have a building at all.
Yeah, they've got to. I just came back from Lydia in the middle of the week. I took just a detour, 10 kilometers north of Lydia towards, but there, the kind of schools you see, the kind of kids you see, it's just terrible. You've got to respond to some of these things and avoid all of these luxurious expenditures at the center for meetings and travels in first class. I think that members of parliament have got to begin to take that even from their own budget, because I think the biggest expenditure in parliament is that commission, their travels, they have to go first class. I've had to travel with MPs for tours across the country. I sit at the back of the plane, they're on the front of the plane because they want to be in first class, even if it adds nothing really in terms of the comfort of the journey. But the point is, can they actually do that beginning from parliament? If they do that, then move to government so that we can support teachers, we can support doctors, the health sector, road networks. Right now, if you want to go to Karamoja, it takes you 2 days. If you're lucky to even get there, in the very first place. After Sironko, after Katakwi, it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Traveling from Gulu to Kitgum is a 45 minutes drive. It takes you 3 hours. Why? The road is bad. So I think we've got to begin to invest in some of these sectors and put the money where we'll have multiply effect in terms of improving the livelihood of our people, as opposed to buying ourselves Benzes of about 500 million.
But I think just a little
bureaucracy will crash probably.
Just a little new development is that I think the leader of government business, who's the Prime Minister, I think yesterday he was able to pick a message of beginning to think outside the box, because sometimes the government has been coming and saying they can't have their way, and yesterday there was a clear no. So by the end of the debate, when I was witnessing it, he had actually requested for time and sounding more flexible, which I think is good for Uganda. And it takes government to think, because this money does not come; it's not there. But we support them. They win elections, and they take up those so that they can work for people, so that they can do the difficult things, so that they can think beyond the midnight light and deliver services. So it's not business as usual, because the pressure out there is real. And my colleague has talked about issues of there are statutory provision in some institutions where you don't touch budgets, but again they've been also a provision, a recommendation in the budget committee report of this year, pushing for the realization of a commission that is going to harmonize salary and the allowances and remuneration structure. And if that comes into place, then there will be no institution in Uganda that can wake up in one day and decide or
triple salaries
and negotiate. You negotiate your package before you take up a job.
Nicholas, let's look at the conscience here before we come to Dr. David. Some time back, the legislators could not get a pay rise for teachers. All of a sudden, they can get this huge cut.
No, they did get some money. They locked up themselves, I think, in Entebbe.
Yes.
And came back with areas where they could actually
find the money.
Get the money to pay teachers. They actually did point out that before Parliament, and I think it was rejected by government.
It has been a progressive fight.
Yeah.
All right. So it's gaining momentum.
It is.
It is.
Honorable Wanyoto mentioned 3 priority areas in their hierarchy.
Yes.
Health, roads, and education.
Health, and education.
Now, health touches each and everyone, whether you are a bourgeois, a leader, a ruler.
Well, they fly outside the country.
The roads, they affect them. That's why they had to say, give us money for 4-wheel drive, because they know those roads are bad. Now, when it comes to education, it's a whole different ball game.
Right.
These people, members of parliament, with due respect, they finished their university. They earn salaries which can help them, make them afford to send their children to private schools, so their children will get quality education. So really, this education thing doesn't hit home. That is my analysis. I could be wrong, but that is the way I see it. But when it comes to health and roads, it hits them on a daily basis.
Their mothers.
Many of them, they go to India, they go to South Africa, they spend a lot of money. So if we had good health facilities, they would also save money. It is hitting home. Now, that is, I think that is how I rationalize
we
this.
can move
so, the cuts.
You may have
How do you
with the with respect to cuts, which have been resisted by the executive. When you're talking about executive, you're talking about all the bureaucrats. Now, when you are making cuts in these things, it is the bureaucrats who are losing money. I think that is my feeling.
So we need to work with this.
My ear on the ground tells me bureaucrats take more money in this, is it transportation, facilitation, this, So the MPs end up with not so much. So I think that's why I think let's cut here, let's put more here in health.
All right.
So the bureaucrats are the ones who advise the executive.
Nicholas, let's go to Kenya right now. Tension is high. Killings in the Tana River County brought 100 people have so far died. There's no election. There was supposed to be one around about this, towards the end of the year. What do you think is going to happen when the elections proper come?
I think in matters of Kenya, we have a whole regional East African citizen in Honorable Lydia Wanyoto here. I think she's better placed to diagnose this problem. But my own stand observation is that Kenya is still a very fragile, it's a very risky society. It's still sitting at the edges. It's still very fragile. And I think that these are pointers that the next election might still be violent if we don't address some of the key issues that have bedeviled that country for a long time.
Honorable Lydia, how do we explain these killings in Kenya?
First of all, I want to pass my condolences and sympathies to those that lost their lives. But Kenya has had its own difficult times in the recent past, because beyond the internal squabbles and fights and the building up to the March next year general elections, they've had to deal with Al-Shabaab. Their sea is very insecure. Their sea, the side of the Indian Ocean, and up north, the neighbors in Somalia. They've had many battles to secure Kenya. Actually, they had a whole huge budget cuts in the government and had an operation called the Linda Inchi.
Protect the country.
The Linda Inchi program, and it's cost them a lot. And of course, in terms of tourism, one of their biggest earners was the tourism industry, and it is gone very low. Many of the hotels at the coast have closed. The restaurants have closed for over a year now. They've just closed. It is very costly. They've laid off people. There's so much unemployment now, you have no idea. So it's bigger than we are just seeing now in terms of death. I did observe the 2002 elections in Kenya, 2007. I was working in Kenya by 1997-99 when they were transiting from then the Moi regime to multi-party. They've had a very entrenched tribal politics, which they must do away with. And they've struggled through the new law, I mean the new constitution, the one that they are...
Majimbo constitution.
They have struggled to have a new constitution which they passed just last year in August, and have been able to see how they are going to implement the new constitution, which is a revolution. It handles all issues that have bedeviled Kenya's politics and the history of Kenya, and the huge inequality in Kenya, because I think Kenya, except I think apart from Brazil, is the second country in the whole world that has the hugest inequalities, economic inequalities,
income inequalities,
socio-economic inequalities in the whole world. The rich are extremely rich.
South Africa would.
At the beginning of the other stand plot where they are going to visit the world, they just people shall go to Bahamas. They just see the rich, they will go visit the world. The poor will not even have vegetable for lunch. It is that bad. So they've been able to address, and Kenya is one of the few African countries where you find the nationals that have no land. I mean, I've been in Kampala, maybe I'm just a squatter on workers' land, but to survive and earn. But I come from a village where there is a home where I will be buried. But there are people in Kenya that are landless in an African country. So that's a very big definition of poverty and landlessness and homelessness. But that has been addressed really in the new constitution. People are going to have land. They are going to get land from those that are too rich and give it to the poor. There's going to be some affirmative action in many ways. Affirmative action in politics. There will be affirmative action in Parliament next year in March. There will be affirmative action in the economics of Kenya and the social transformation of Kenya. People are going to have land. They're going to have gardens and things like that. So that there's the bridging of gaps and provide leadership. Now, how we get to March next year?
Briefly, in one sentence,
is what now is what's on table. They have a very strong civil society. I think in the region it is it's
one of
the strongest. So they are working on. There are so many meetings on peace. I mean, they're just working on each other's side. Please, let's have peace. Right. Let's give this a chance. So I think they know where the problem is and they're working on it. But we wish them well and we'll be there for Kenya.
David Mushabe, U.S. Ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens killed. You've lived in the U.S. and worked there as well, I believe. Why would the Americans have enjoyed too much freedom?
Well, I don't know whether Americans enjoy too much freedom, but briefly.
Well, this man creates a video, the government can't do anything about it, and it's putting the lives of Americans in danger, senior Americans in some places. There was a riot in Khartoum. In Khartoum, they invaded the American embassy, raised the Islamic flag. Cairo, there have been huge riots. The Muslim Brotherhood was ruling, which is the ruling party, has called protests.
Yeah, I don't know. I have come to study government very carefully world over. Nothing as such just slips through the cracks easily like that unless there's some purpose. So the way I know how sophisticated the American system is, I don't think that video could easily slip through the cracks without the CIA, the FBI looking at it.
Actually went through
and analyzing
YouTube. It's a YouTube video.
Without analyzing,
they would have approved it.
Pros and cons.
You think they would have approved it?
I don't want to say they would have approved it, but there is in law there is what they call willful blindness.
Let's try.
If you willfully keep yourself blind, choose to be blind,
you're complicit.
But knowing that there are certain benefits you might reap through chaos or stability or whatever you might want to call it, then
you've agreed with it.
You agreed.
Let's look at Terry Jones, the pastor in the US who made, he hit hard headlines the world over, saying he was going to ban the Quran. Looked like a bizarre incident, and the Americans were just begging him. Should not have just arrested the fellow, put him behind bars and talked about it.
There's freedom of speech in the United States.
Well, but no freedom of absolute.
As long as it does not break the law. Well, if you
or endanger the lives of other people.
Yeah, or endanger the lives of other people. If you enter a movie theater and you shout fire, fire, and people stampede and they break their legs and people die, then you're liable. But briefly, you talked about that Kenyan situation.
No, our time is up. That's why we have to rush it, really. Let's look at what some of you said, listeners. On if there's time, you talk about Kenya.
You missed a very good point. The first lesson the African leaders learned from the colonials was divide and rule.
Yes. Okay.
That is why you have the Pokoma and the Oma fighting.
All right, let's hear from some of our listeners. Spectrum Mushabe, opposition wins by elections because of the vigilance. In other elections, they are thin on the ground and their agents are harassed. That's Helen Inchireka. Hubbard says, Spectrum, remember, the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the brain of the oppressed. One day, an egg will walk. Philosophical there. Somebody else says, Spectrum, Honorable, KCCA thumbs up. Having the building demolished and go ahead and open the public road close by, I'm reading it as it is, close by Imperial Royale, and also remember Imperial Royale occupies a road reserve. I think he's addressing it to you. Somebody else says, Spectrum, why is KCCA lying? There is a building coming up on Johnston Street without parking. Why? And then that person who doesn't sign with their name says, Spectrum, the government of Uganda has the capacity to fight corruption, but our leaders are simply not serious because they are a party. Honorable Wanyoto, we know you're not the spokesperson of that party. I know you're not that statement. On TV. As it go home.
But that's true, I am not a spokesperson of NRM. Well, I'm a member of the NRM. It has to be very clear because I don't want someone else to go and address the press conference causing disclaimers. So I wanted to be honest with myself, not to carry titles I don't own. I've not even earned, maybe. So,
but you form a better spokesperson than Fonopondo, I guess.
So anyway, I wanted to say that I hear the listeners what they are saying. I hear what their views about KCC and the illegal structures there in the road reserve, and we'll be able to support the KCCA to do their work.
We have to go. There's something coming up in front of the Watoto Church building. We still don't know what it is. There's not been a pronouncement about it. We hope it's not a building. Most likely it is.
It's a roundabout being beautified, actually.
Maybe the around it. We have to go. Thank you very much, dear guests. Honorable Lydia Wanyoto Mutende, former Ugandan representative at the East African Parliament from the party but not the spokesperson. Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL, also pundit on political and social affairs. Dr. David Mushabe from the Mushabe-Munungu company advocate.
For being a very sober-minded movementist.
Thank you for tuning in.
She's one of them you can debate with.
Especially when back on Monday. I've been here with Edmond Kizito. Have a good weekend.
Hello, Uganda. This is Regina Bell. And for my very first time ever, I'll be in Kampala for the 5th annual Now